Hey YouTube, welcome back. It is day 47 of being a beekeeper. Today is June 30th. Last week I added on my second brood box to the top of the hive. After that video went out, a user whose name is about to appear on the screen told me to check out a thing called pyramiding. What I did before was I took one of my frames from the lower hive, the one in the first position over there, and I put it up into the second brood box to try and lure the bees up into the top brood box so they could continue making comb. This user suggested I look into a thing called pyramiding, and that would be taking brood frames from the lower box and bringing them up into the second box and creating a pyramid of brood. So in the top brood box you'd have empty frames on the outside, brood in the middle, and on the lower box you have honey on the outside. Then you have alternating frames of empty frame, brood frame, empty frame, brood frame, empty frame. So that you'd have a pyramid of brood and empty frames on top, and that would hopefully lure the bees up into the top brood box so they can make comb in the second brood box. Because that's the goal here. I'm trying to fill this and this with brood and honey for the bees to use over the winter. So today's goal is to open up the hive, do a full inspection. I'm going to pyramid the frames. I'm going to feed the bees with some new syrup and just check and see how things are going overall. See how much comb they've built since the last time I was here, and let's get started. So about my smoker troubles earlier, I think what was happening was I wasn't packing my smoker enough with the pine needles. I was leaving them, they were pretty loose in there, and they just kept going out. So I've learned to kind of pack this a lot tighter on the inside, and that seemed to help last week. Checking last week's food. Whoa, there's a lot left in there. Wow, it's probably half full. Here's another tip. If you have an empty hive box, which this is my empty hive box, I'm going to leave this right here. And as I take out frames, they're going to go in there and rest in the frame box rather than lean on the side of the hive. Good tip. Time to get suited up. Perfect every time. Alright, I just want to give you guys a quick look into the top brood box. I'm going to take out the frames that they haven't touched yet. This is new comb since last week. Full of nectar. Looking good. And this was the comb in position 1. Last week on the bottom brood box. Ooh, queen's on this. Queen's up in the second box. Queen's right here. So this is great. She's laying eggs in the top brood box. All right, this is going to now go in position middle in the top brood box. And I know the queen is on that frame, so I got to be careful with that. Putting this down, I'm going to set the top box on this. Okay, this is frame number 8 on the bottom box. This is the one that I did all the comb surgery on, and they have been working very hard. This is pure honey and nectar. This one is going to stay in the bottom. All right, gloves are going on. They're hitting me. Okay, this is frame number 7 from brood box number 1, the bottom. Pure honey. And nectar. And that is going to stay in this box. Frame 6. Looks like brood and capped honey. I'm gonna put that back in this box. Frame number 5. I'm going to move this up to the top box. That's a good looking frame. A lot of brood there. Frame number 4. Number 3. Frame 2. And this is the empty frame I put in last week. Yep, there they are. This was an empty frame last week. Nice comb, it's all pollen. They're all festooning on their building comb. All right, I apologize for the technical difficulties. My camera, which I love, has this annoying feature that it shuts itself off after 29 minutes of recording, and you have to re-hit the record button to get it started again. And I was in the middle of the hive inspection, and it just shut itself off. So I didn't record any of the pyramiding that I did in the hive. So I'm going to explain it using popsicle sticks. All right, imagine this is the hive, and you're looking straight on the hive. This is the bottom box, this is the top box. The entrance is down here, and you're looking at the hive as you're looking straight at the front of the hive. And these are frames that are hanging in the hive. Hope that makes sense. So this is what the hive looked like 2 weeks ago. We had all brood in the bottom. There was a honey frame here, and this was the honeycomb that I had stuck the broken comb on the side of and did that little surgery on 2 weeks ago. Put the second brood box on last week with all empty frames. And what I did is I took this brood frame, moved it up to the top, and put an empty frame on the bottom. So that's what I did last week. So we had all empty frames here, a brood frame at the top, and then this was just an empty frame, brood, honey, and repaired comb with honey. Today, what I did, I opened up the hive. They had built this frame with new comb, with just honey. They had built this frame with new comb and honey. And when I opened up and looked at this frame, the queen was hanging on this frame. So this is what I was doing during the inspection that you already saw. So to do the pyramiding, what I did is remove all of these empty frames. I took the queen frame and put that in the middle of the top box. I then took 2 frames of brood from the bottom and moved those up to the top box. And I put empty frames in between the brood frames, which is how pyramiding is described, like this. All right. I also took a honey frame and moved that up there to be on the outside of the top frame. So the bottom box now contains the new comb with honey on the outside, empty frame, brood, empty brood, and honey on the outside. The top brood box now has honeycomb on the outside, which they built last week. The way pyramiding is described is you have brood on the bottom separated by empty frames, brood on the top all together, and then empty frames around it. However, all my brood frames were really packed wide with comb, and I could not get them together. They just wouldn't fit together. They were spaced way far apart. So to make the spacing better, I moved the brood over and had empty frames in between. The queen was on this as close to the middle as possible. I had two broods, an empty, a brood, and then honey, and then empty, empty here. So ideally I would have had this frame on the outside with the brood close to the brood, but these frames just didn't fit together. So at the end of the day today, we have honey on the outside on both boxes. The top, which should have the brood together, I had to put an empty one in between to get these to be able to close up. But the brood is all together at the top. It's over the brood on the bottom. I put the top box over the top so all the brood is centered in the whole hive with honey on the outside. And that was my version of pyramiding, which it's almost checkerboarding, but it's pyramiding, pyroboarding. I don't know. That's what I did. All right, I don't know how long the camera was off for, but I put everything back in place. The queen is on the middle frame right here. We have brood, brood, empty, brood, honey, and then honey on the outside. There's an empty one here. There's a lot of activity in there right now. I'm gonna put the cover on. Syrup. New syrup. All right, so as most things in life go, the pyramiding sounded great on paper. It was a little more complicated in real life because you're juggling frames and bees and getting stung, and it was a little more complicated because I have foundationless frames, and the bees are making their comb very wide on the frames so they don't just fit together like they should. So I was alternating empty frames in between so they could close together better. All right, I gotta admit, that was a little stressful. Stressful mainly because I don't really know what I'm doing. All right, so that was my day today. That was, like I said, not quite what I expected. The frames were definitely built out pretty wide, so it was a little bit harder to, put them together the way they should be going. Bees were a bit aggressive at the end, but I was tearing apart their home, so it's understandable. But the queen is definitely in there. She was up in the second brood box with only 1 and like a third frames built. She was up there on that comb. So in the last week, they had built 1 entire frame on the bottom box that was empty. They almost filled that up. And they built about half a frame on the top box, and then they finished building out the last frame on the bottom box. They connected all that stuff that I had surgically attached earlier in the week. So they've been building comb. That's good. The queen is still in there, and there's, a lot of honey, a lot of capped cells. So hopefully the pyramiding will get them up to the second box, and they can start building more comb and hopefully get 2 brood boxes full in the next month or so. I'm hoping by the end of July that they have these boxes full. And I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll try and show you our sunset. This right here is a full acre of wildflowers that we just planted this year, and they are finally flowering. So the bees are right here, and they have a full acre of flowering flowers right next door. And all around our field here, we do have a lot of other wildflowers. Lots of purple flowers. I think that's vetch. And then we have milkweed is coming in right now. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of flowers, and hopefully they get to work on that comb, and then they fill it up with nectar and pollen, and they're ready for the winter. If they fill these 2 brood boxes in July, and we have solid hive filled with honey and filled with comb, I'm going to put the flow frames in here on the top box, and then they'll have a couple of months, see what they do with the fall months. If they can get some nectar in the flow frames, and we might get a little mini harvest of honey, but I'm not sure. The goal this year is to fill these boxes so that the bees will survive the winter. That's the goal. If we get some honey out of it at the end, great. But the goal is a strong hive, 2 boxes of honey for the bees. That's what we're working for. Thanks for watching. See you soon.